When you get seriously interested in living history and look at the data for how people lived across various social classes and so on, you end up having to confront a really fundamental observation that whenever you walk onto any field in which a reenactment presentation is being done, you confront a serious problem. There's way too much stuff. It's not just the sea of tents, most of which have no more than two people staying in them. It's all the other stuff, the beds that are in those tents, the tables, the chairs, the benches, the piles of cookware. It may all well be documentable from original sources, but the question is, how on earth did it get there? Now, looking at that question across a broad range of periods and cultures would be a vast undertaking. So what we're looking at here is one specific example where we do have a lot of quite good, precise data upon which to work. And that is the conduct of the Roman army in what's called the Middle Byzantine period, primarily the 10th, 11th centuries. We have military manuals that tell us quite a lot about how this process should be organised. The basic unit of the Roman army since ancient times was the Dekarkhy or Contubernium. Going with the majority of the sources and the scholarship, that's a unit of 8 soldiers with a servant, all of whom did everything together. They travelled together, they all slept together in one tent, they all ate together. They were basically a functioning household with all the necessary bits and pieces to deal with their own affairs on a day-to-day basis. Now, the sources say that ideally all their gear should be carried in a wagon pulled by an ox. There'd be plenty of carrying capacity there for anything they needed. But occasionally you get a situation where they have to either make better speed than you can if you're plodding along beside an oxen pulling a wagon, or if you're going into circumstances where the terrain is not suitable for wheeled vehicles of that kind. And therefore, all the gear has got to go onto the back of a pack animal, normally in that period, a mule. What you see laid out in front of you is the basic equipage of a contubernion. From the foreground you have an axe, a hatchet, a pickaxe, a drepanon, which in Greek is a term for any hooked implement with the blade sharpened on the inside, so it could be a sickle, a scythe, or as here a brush hook. Beyond that you have a shovel. Beyond that you have the fabric of the tent. To its left, bags with the ropes and pegs, and beyond them both the poles. To the right of them you have a cookpot, and beyond that, wrapped in fabric, a hand mill. Beside them, what you see on a stand is my replica of a Byzantine pack saddle. This is based upon some wonderfully detailed 11th century manuscript sources. You might notice it's not strapped onto the stand. There's a reason for this. One of the things you have to be careful of when you're loading a pack animal is that the load is balanced. If it's not balanced, there can be quite negative results. It will at the very least tire the animal out more quickly, as it has to cope with more effort on one side of its body than the other. Might also in the long term cause it injury. At very least otherwise, there is greater risk of your load falling off. So I've left it unstrapped so to make sure that my load is balanced, because if it isn't, it will fall off and then I will be deeply embarrassed. So now let's get on with the loading. To save a bit of time, I've preset the ropes that will bind the load in place so we can crack straight into it, beginning with the bags of ropes and pegs. I've already made sure that they're evenly distributed, so that's not going to be a problem. Next, we'll go on to the quern, a bit of weight in that will help stabilise those bags. From there, the next stage is the poles. Now, having the bags of ropes and pegs there is quite handy because it helps to support the poles while I'm tying them in place. There will now be a slight edit because you really don't need to spend a while looking up my skirt while I tie things off on this side. So, finally now, the big item, the tent. Of course, if I were in the Roman army, in the infantry, I wouldn't be doing this on my own. And I would certainly need help lifting that weight high enough to get onto the back of a full-size mule. Here's the heaviest item that we have here, of course. Now, tents in this period were very much as we understand them now, round pavilions. The old early imperial paradigm of leather tents that we know from such good archaeology as on Hadrian's Wall were long gone. So, at least this load is not carrying something as bulky and awkward as that. Don't kick me. Now the tools, at this point, just get slotted in under the ropes on the top of everything. They might well be needed on the journey, and you wouldn't want to have to unload the whole thing to get at an axe to cut down a tree or something. And that will be the last item that we mustn't forget, because the comment that an army marches on its stomach is not primarily true. It marches on its feet, which is why the Byzantine military manuals, one of them instructs them, a general defending a city, to make sure none of his bootmakers run away. But the men, well-fed men, fight better. So there we are. It's done. we're ready to go. We'll be going that way. Haven't had orders yet. I hope it's not Manzikert. In conclusion, what you see here is a spreadsheet of the weights of all the equipment that I have accumulated, and most of which I've used for this demonstration. It's interesting to see. I was a little bit surprised myself that it's not as much weight as I would have anticipated, and certainly not enough to strain the capacities of a well-bred mule. I will be giving a paper on this subject in Poland next month, June 2023, which may be published in due course, and otherwise you can have a look at my article on baggage animals in the volume currently visible on the screen.